Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. We are live again with Stephen Keith Mills and his film Love Is Not Love, candidate for Best International Feature, Best Directing, Best Editing, and also Best Actress with Tonya Cornelis. And we're happy to have you here. Welcome, Stephen.
Well, it's great to be here. We're living in such a hole with the virus, that it's like a little, it's like you've answered the message bottle sent out from the island saying, accept my film, and the bottle comes back with a little note said, we did. So thank you for taking us in.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It's our pleasure, really. So a little information about Love Is Not Love. First of all, the title itself speaks out Shakespeare, but I believe it's not only Shakespeare. And it's a story about the myth of love and how we can deconstruct this myth in a way. The story happens to be set up in New York in early December, and everyone is sort of hunting for love, and the main character falls in love, but is also deceived in a way by his own conception of love. So it's all, I would say, a philosophical romance of how we approach this universal theme. And I'm really, really curious actually to know more about it, especially how you work this out with your actors. The result is brilliant. So we're really curious about the rehearsal process. Some information about Stephen. He began his career as an actor and he's also actually the main actor in Love Is Not Love. He became a filmmaker, and this is his debut as director of a feature film. Am I correct, Stephen?
This is the first feature I've directed, yes.
Exactly.
I've directed 3 short films, but this is the first feature.
Directorial feature debut. So we are absolutely, honored, and you're also competing for the best directing session. So we have you for many selections: best directing, best editing, best international feature, as I said, and best actress for Tonya Cornelis. So let's move to the questions. First of all, I know from your director's statement your interest, your intrigued soul for the drama of the private. You said you are intrigued by everything that is interior and so more humanly connected. And your film, I like to say, it shows it so clearly. It's so like a deep insight into the human soul, and the interaction between the actors shows that. So my question to you is that, beginning with the inspiration, what inspired you to make this movie? What happened? If it's something that in your life experience that brought you to say, I want to say this story now. Why now?
Well, time is running out for one thing, but so if you don't get it done now, you go up and smoke. I think the domestic briar patch has always been fascinating to me. I mean, even watching my parents, watching other people's marriage. I remember coming across a letter once that some wife had written to her husband saying, don't ever say you don't love me. I mean, I was so moved by that. And I was young when I read that, but it taught me that there is so much conflict that is never seen in relationships, especially domestic ones. So I think I wanted to examine that. And also, whenever there's a problem, there's some sort of imagined solution, something that you think is going to make this better. And that's where fantasy comes in. And we're flooded with fantasy from the beginning. I mean, it's all mythology, and I picked the myth of Tristan and Isolde because, I think that's the seminal romantic myth of Western culture. But we are taught that love should be in a certain way. It should have a certain flair to it. It should have a certain heartbeat that's faster than the one we're going at now. And I think because we don't know how to negotiate the briar patch, we are much more susceptible to the fantasy. So I wrote the thing to sort of teach myself how to be more observant in a domestic situation and how to examine fantasy from a human point of view and not from a mythological point of view.
Right.
So it was a lesson, an attempted lesson on my part to teach myself the love part of the not, and the not love part also, because I think the not love part is what gets us into trouble. Did I confuse you completely?
No, absolutely. I was positively lost in a trance of words that, make me feel the beauty of your concept and the beauty of that I experienced in watching the film. I was thinking precisely because of this attempt to deconstruct the myth, and in a way, no one is arrogant enough to say we know what love is and we say it right away like a definition we can find on a dictionary. So the beauty of what you did, I think, it's that you allowed us to see so many other layers. And when we talk about love, it's easy to go into the cliche, and your movie actually showed us a different approach. So actually, I was curious to ask you, how did you work with the actors to deconstruct the myth? How did you approach? What did you say to them? Today, we're gonna deconstruct the myth of love, and we're gonna try to approach it in a more human way, and what that human means now.
You can't do that when you're directing. Right. That's too conceptual. You just have to look at the scenes that you're in, or that people are playing, and try to succeed in those scenes. I mean, with the character of Reina, the escort, I mean, the arc to those scenes was they fall in love, or they think they do. So I told Alejandra, I said, the actress playing Reina, I said, look, your task is to make the audience believe that you love someone with an age difference that's between us. I mean, so your job is to really sell it, to sell the need for such a man as myself. For me, playing those scenes, I think Frank is totally smitten. I mean, I think he wants love. I mean, I think he wants, but it turns out he mainly likes the satisfaction more than the person. Because when she asks to extend their relationship beyond the bedroom, he can't do it. His image of her is as a lover, not as a person with him in the outside world.
You can't confine her in a way. I mean, he tries to, but it's much more than that, much more than the simple role. So he's taking, he probably doesn't accept when the physical attraction is kind of loosen up and things are becoming similar to what he's experiencing in his marriage. He doesn't want that beauty that he had originally to fall apart, but slowly he actually acknowledged there is something going into that direction.
But also it's the tyranny of fantasy. Fantasy will not allow freedom. Fantasy must be obeyed. And I think, I mean, that has different levels, but I think on a certain plane, that's the nature of it. Now with Paula, with his wife, it's a fantasy of habit, a fantasy of continuing, a fantasy of security. So that's a fantasy too. And I think so here's a man trying to navigate two fantasies, and he's not able to. He's not able to find perhaps the moment with Reina that he could cross into her life as human to human. He doesn't find the point in the domestic life where he could allow more erotic presence from Paula. Um, so he makes up his mind depending on what he thinks he does not have. And I think that's what the problem is, you know. We're operating off of the not love part of the title. Whereas love is tougher to find, but you have to look for it more carefully, because it might really be there.
Yeah, beyond all the layers of fantasy that we disguise us. What about so when I immediately read the title, and I'm sure everyone who reads the title thinks about the Shakespeare sonnets, the 116 sonnets. Was that a point of start? Was that in a way part of your references when you wanted to explore this theme? Because Shakespeare for us is a bit kind of the guardian of the love myth. So making the title of the film, quoting him in a way, could have made us think that vision of love, and then a little bit more of a domestic, realistic one that he gave us. Still, enriched by fantasy, but at the same time, connected with that poetic touch that we know from Shakespeare himself.
Well, the Shakespeare poem has a whole different take on love. That poem is, love is constant, it never changes, it never wavers. It is almost a puritanical view of love. And I don't think life is like that. I think...
exactly. That's why I mentioned that, because in a way it looks like the title is like winking to that poem, but it's also saying I'm going towards a different direction. I am actually saying something that is different. I'm trying to show you the myth of love, that is something, and then the love itself that I'm trying to talk about in the story, which goes indeed in a different direction. So I thought it might have been a way for you to connect, but then at the same time, change direction, just as a reference.
Well, it's as if Shakespeare meets Nouvelle Vague. The films of the 50s, 60s, and 70s from Europe. Yeah. What appeals to me about those films is that they're not logical. Things happen almost as if in fairy tales. They happen when they need to happen, not because of logic. And I like that kind of dynamic, where you don't have the ABCs of how you got from here to there. Things just happen. And, I like to surprise the audience. I like to surprise the actors and the characters, and see how we deal with, the kind of leeriness, of life. Life does not follow a pattern. And if we make it follow a pattern, then we're not alive.
Yes.
So that's what I want the audience to do, you see. Now, the audience is a whole different thing. There are two types of audience. The ones that will take the ride, and the other ones that say, hey, wait a minute, where's the formula here? How did this happen? On page 23, the character is speaking for the first time. What is that? They're offended by the fact that formula isn't really a big part of this. That it is more of a shape-shifting experience rather than a defined and pinpointed one.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the feeling that the jury had watching the film. And in a way, yes, I thought at first watching the movie, actually, the French Nouvelle Vague, and at the same time, I was thinking you as a French actor. At just the first sight, not knowing anything about you, that was the first impression.
But that's great, because the test of any title is how does it sound in French? And Love is Not Love sounds great in French. L'amour n'est pas l'amour. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Anyway, going to the questions again. I wanted to ask you more about any memories from the set. Something that is kind of the audience is curious, I'm sure, about the making of it. And I know there are, I mean, so many beautiful scenes, but is there anyone that particularly, was difficult to shoot, or in a way took you more time, and the one maybe you are the most fond in the movie, if there is anyone that you are most fond of all the scenes?
Well, I love all the scenes. I can't pick a favorite. The one thing that was a point of joy in the film was we didn't know how to shoot the New York scenes. We couldn't go to New York. It's too expensive. We couldn't bring actors. I mean, we couldn't find a city that looked like New York that we could sort of, make believe. And then I thought of those movies, and you've seen them, where people are driving along a country road and the countryside is whizzing by, and they're not there. They're in a studio and some movie is playing the road. So that's rear screen projection. And the cinematographer and I, by ourselves, went to New York. I know New York pretty well because I've lived there a while. And we picked different locations. We timed out the scenes that the construction workers mainly are the two characters, sort of an Irish chorus, if you will.
I lived in New York for a while myself, so I know New York pretty well as well.
And we, timed out the distance between actor and camera. And we took all these B-roll shots, or plates as they're called, brought them back, figured out how to do the rear screen because not a lot of people had that information. We finally found a company who had an actual rear screen projection, huge projector, got 3 treadmills, and that's it. I mean, the New York looks so beautiful in the background.
Honest, now that you told me, I actually didn't imagine. Sometimes the external scenes in New York happen to be shot indoors anyway, because it might be difficult, if you are setting it up in a different period of time. But honestly, it was really realistic to watch. I wouldn't, watching it now, probably rewatching, I could find out. But at the same time, it was so well done that I thought you were actually filming outside in New York.
But it's real enough for the imagination to accept it. I mean, I think it amuses the imagination. The imagination knows it's not real. I mean, because how can you have blurry scenes next to very clear scenes? I mean, if you wanted to technically analyze it, but if you don't,
find out. That's why I said if we look at it, with a different eye, definitely I can find out now. But at the same time, your movie was so, in a way, I mean, the good side of it, what both me to love it, is that you jump into the story and it's really a different world that you create. New York, as I said, I live there, so I know it. But the way you pictured it, everything becomes believable. Even the elevator scene that is supposed to look like one, it actually is excused by the fantasy, by the journey that the character Frank is going through. So everything becomes believable because of the context you put the characters in. I wanted to ask you, why so New York? Because there are, New York is definitely the most active city you could have picked, but is that because you live there and you know it and you felt as a personal touch to set the story up there, or any other particular reason?
I think the New York portion, which is the beginning portion, is sort of the collective view of the theme. That everybody's having trouble in their relationships. Nothing is working for anyone, and in New York, as you know, I mean, you walk down the sidewalk, you hear a third of a conversation, a tenth of a conversation, you hear a few words here and there. You don't hear the full thing because it's too busy, it's too fast. So I just wanted to establish the theme of sort of relationship discontent the winter of our discontent, marriage-wise, relationship-wise, love-wise. Nobody's happy. And it happened so fast that I wasn't obligated to finish the sentences because somebody else would be speaking in that time.
That's so New York.
Yeah.
So any other roadblocks in a way? Because I'm sure, where did you actually film? Where were you, apart from the green screen?
It's very interesting. I love this little story. It's a place called the Brewery in LA, downtown. And it's a converted brewery, and it's a live workspace. It's not an apartment. It's a live workspace for artists. And my son, Wyatt, is a painter, and a very good one. And he had one of those studios. It was huge, 1,900 square feet. And I looked at him, and he was about to go to Germany to study with somebody that he wanted to. And the space was going to be rented to somebody else. And I thought, this is a sound stage. I can make something here. I can do these scenes here. I can do rain in here. I can do the corridor here. I can do the elevators here. And as it turned out, I did all the New York stuff there because we rigged up that huge rear projection screen, and we did all of the New York scenes right in that studio. So I was really happy to sort of follow in the artistic footsteps of my son.
Definitely, that's a lack, the touch of art from your own family. What last question I wanted to ask you is the interaction between you as Frank and the role of the wife, because you mentioned it a little bit before, but I wanted to know more in that domestic view of kind of trying to, she's not more involved in the erotic side of Frank's life, but she could. What do you think about Frank considering that? Is he not any more attracted to her, or there is a distance that he may wish to overcome? How is their relationship?
It's funny, when I originally wrote the script, I had them coming back together at the end. He has a part where he tells about this dream of a sort of waiting in an airport, and it's everybody's been infected with some sort of virus. Oddly enough, this was written 4 years ago. And in the course of that, they both got,
You can foresee the future.
Yeah. He tells her his dream of them both dying, and before they die, he says to her, "I'm glad it was you that I married." And that was supposed to be an opening, kind of an epiphany for both of them to make a connection and stay together. But the way the scenes were going, and I was looking at them saying, this is too dark. The scenes are too dark. You can't pull it out. It's an airplane going down like that. It's going to crash. You cannot pull it up and make it into a happy ending. So I had some rewriting to do, and that dream became, I don't know if you remember it, but Frank sort of becomes invisible in that scene. You can see through him. And it's almost a dream where he is disappearing from the marriage, disappearing from her. I had three choices. One, he gets together with Raina. Two, he gets together with Paula. Three, he's by himself. And that's the one I picked because I think it's the most honest one. And more in line with the Tristan myth. I mean, somebody who so infected by fantasy that they're doomed, almost like in Greek mythology, they're cursed to walk the earth in quest of the impossible relationship.
Impossible dream.
Yeah.
Impossible dream. Yeah, he actually reminded me of, this sentence from Cinema Paradiso, the movie by Giuseppe Tornatore, when the mother is talking with the son that finally, after many years, went back to his small village. and it's a being faithful is a curse, because if you're faithful, you're always alone. I think your character Frank is faithful to his fantasy most of all. So in a way, he's doomed to be alone, probably because his fantasy is more important than his wife, more important than Reina, is more important than anything that he could finally get in real life. So in a way, he picked his own destiny by just being himself.
Well, that's interesting, and there is even at the end a mythological touch. Orpheus and Eurydice. Frank is walking along a path and he turns and looks behind him, and there's no one there.
Yeah.
And it's funny, that particular shot, when we got it, I mean, it was an empty path in New York. Usually they're not empty. There was nobody on it, and leaves were falling. It was almost like the end of Cyrano de Bergerac. I mean, it was just so beautiful. So we were very lucky to get handed our very last shot in that way. We could never have staged that.
Yes. That's some action, art. I think a little miracle on set, and when they happen, just you're there acknowledging it, even if you are actually in that case the actor saying it. So even more mystical moments.
Yes, and we had a long discussion on how to end the film. And we actually, I mean, the filming started in 2017. It ended in 2018. Editing, and then one last pickup shot in New York in June of 2019, where all the shots of Frank had been against the backdrop. And I wanted him to walk through it to, I guess, fool the audience, or to at least not have anybody say, oh, well, he's just walking into the backdrop. So to have him actually walk into the path of the park was the choice. So films never really end, and I look at it now and I'm tempted to correct it, but it is what it is. It lives. I'm very proud of it and happy with all the actors.
Don't change it, please. It's actually, I think, it's like about when you write, whatever you write, a poem or is a prose, it doesn't matter, if it doesn't, a certain age, you will look back and it doesn't belong to you anymore. You think, oh, I couldn't make it better, or what is better? I mean, at that point, it's actually, I think, honest for the time and, the place when you made it. So I hope you never decide to change it, because it's in its own being. I hope you never change it.
Well, thank you, and it really means a lot to hear from you, because I know that you really saw the film, and a lot of people have trouble, or it's not as accessible. But I think if you see it and go with it, it can have meaning. And I really thank you for spending the time with it and taking the ride. You're obviously one of the people that can take the ride.
Well, we thank you for actually sharing it with us, and thank you for being part of the festival. That's why actually when we find movies like yours, we feel more than, I personally felt touched. So that's I felt touched with all the movies, but obviously every person has an individuality, so you feel drawn towards a certain way to tell the story, and I really admired yours. I want to say to the audience that I want to remind them that we are live streaming with all the movies from the 28th till the 30th of August. On the 30th, we announce all the winners of this edition, and also all the audience can vote for their favorite film of the entire edition, so among the shorts and the feature film. So please, we welcome you to watch Love Is Not Love by Stephen T. Mills, and we thank him for being with us today.
It's a pleasure, and England never seemed so close. Thank you very much.
I know.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Stephen. Thank you. Take care. Bye, everyone.